Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. This is Bia, and this topic is something that I am so excited to talk about because if there's one thing I'm proud of, it's my ability to maintain friendships. I've been friends with the same group of girls since I was 12. While we're all doing our own thing now, the fact that we can pause, drift, grow, and still return to each other is one of the most beautiful things I've witnessed. I used to think it was just geographic luck since we all live near each other and went to the same high school. But now, a third of us are scattered across different cities, even different countries, and we still make it work. Because of this experience, I've come to understand that our friendships have had seasons. Seasons where we saw each other every week, seasons where months passed between hangouts, season where someone needed us more, and season where we're all just existing in parallel. But through it all, we knew we had each other's backs. And I think that's the thing we forget about adult friendships. They're not static. High school friendships look different from college friendships, which look different from the friendships we're trying to maintain now that we are in our 20s and 30s. Another thing that really pushed me to talk about maintaining friendships is from my personal observation, seeing so many conversations online on how rigid we've become with the people in our lives. And I don't mean accepting mistreatment or tolerating bad behavior. I mean the way we sometimes treat every small thing, a missed text, an unliked post, a canceled plan, like it's a personal attack or abandonment. It's like we've lost our tolerance for imperfection. We forget that impermanence and flexibility are part of healthy relationships, that not every misstep is a betrayal or every inconvenience a sign of disrespect. For example, maybe right now your capacity to support someone is low, and that's fine. You can make up for it later on. The returns don't have to be immediate because friendship isn't transactional, it's more cumulative. So today, I want to give you my perspective on adult friendships through the lens of attachment styles. Because I think a lot of friendship conflicts come down to mismatched expectations, unspoken needs, and patterns we learned in childhood that we're unconsciously or consciously repeating now. Before we get into the friendship stuff, let's talk about what attachment styles are first. I'm gonna read my notes. So according to psychologist John Balby, an attachment style is a pattern of how you behave in relationships. It's shaped by how your primary caregivers treated you as a child, whether they were consistent, distant, unpredictable, or loving. Balby developed this theories in the 1950s while studying how children respond to separation from their primary caregivers. He noticed that kids didn't all react the same way. Some were distressed but could be comforted, others seemed indifferent, and some were completely inconsolable. These early patterns, he argued, become the blueprint for how we relate to other people throughout our lives. There are four main attachment styles psychologists recognize. One is secure, two is anxious/ambivalent, third is avoidant, and fourth is disorganized. Your attachment style influences everything: how you choose your friends, how you maintain those friendships, how you handle conflict, how you respond when someone pulls away, and even how you show up when things are going well. Most advice on how to be a better friend assumes everyone operates in the same way. But the reality is, we don't. Someone with anxious attachment style needs reassurance. Someone with an avoidant attachment style might need more space. If you don't understand your own patterns, you'll keep running into the same problems. Now, what exactly shapes our attachment styles? There are a few key factors. First, the consistency of care you received, whether your emotional needs were validated or dismissed, how your caregivers responded to distress, and whether the environment felt safe or unpredictable. All of this gets internalized and becomes your working model for relationships. So here's how my video is going to work. I'm going to walk you through each attachment style, explain what it can look like in friendships, and give you practical tips for maintaining your friendships based on your attachment style. Let's start with the attachment style that's basically the gold standard, the one we're all trying to get, which is secure attachment. People with a secure attachment style are comfortable with intimacy and independence. They trust that their friends care for them even when they're not in constant contact. They communicate openly, handle conflict well, and don't spiral when someone takes a while to text back. Where does this come from? Why do some people just get it when it comes to relationships? Well, it usually starts in childhood. People with secure attachment style typically had caregivers who were consistent, emotionally available, and responsive to their needs. You learn early on that people are generally reliable and that expressing your needs will not push them away. When you cried, someone came to your rescue. You needed something, someone would listen, and that predictability created a foundation of trust that you carried into adulthood. Now that we have the origin story out of the way, what does secure attachment style look like in our day-to-day friendships? Here's what I've noticed. First, you're likely comfortable being vulnerable without fearing rejection. Second, you likely don't take things personally when a friend is busy or distant. I also notice that people with secure attachment have less difficulty in navigating conversation without feeling like the friendship is over. Fourth, they're likely to give their friends space when they need it, and they can also ask their friends space when they need it. And lastly, they're okay with friendships evolving. They don't really cling to how things used to be. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds perfect, the gold standard, right? And of course, that is our goal because secure attachment is basically a cheat code for relationships. You're able to maintain deep, stable friendships without constant anxiety or avoidance to prove that they care every 5 seconds, but you also don't run away when things get real. However, secure attachment also has its blind spots. Sometimes, securely attached people can undercommunicate because they can have this assumption that everyone is as secure as they are. Like they might think, oh, we haven't talked in 3 months, we're totally fine. While someone with anxious attachment is probably spiraling, thinking that you don't care about them anymore. Or you might have less patience for friends who needs more reassurance because to you, it might feel unnecessary. So if you identified with this, here's how you can be even a better friend and maintain those relationships long term. 1, don't assume everyone operates like you. Some friends need more check-ins, more words of affirmation, more reassurance that you still care. Just because you don't need constant contact doesn't mean your friends don't. Pay attention to what they need and not just what you would need. And this connects to my second point. You have to model healthy communication. You're good at this already, so keep being the person who addresses issues directly instead of letting resentment build. And I think this is also a good practice because your friends are learning from you. Third, you have to stay consistent. Even if you don't need constant contact, some of your friends do. A quick thinking of you message can go a long way. It's also important to show up to the group chat, respond to the memes, react to the posts, and remember the small details about their lives. Consistency builds trust, especially for friends who don't have a secure attachment style. And finally, and this is the one securely attached people don't hear enough, don't let complacency creep in. Just because you're secure doesn't mean you can coast. Keep showing up even when it's inconvenient. Secure attachment style is a practice. There's work required to maintain it. Don't take your friendships for granted just because they feel stable. But what if that didn't resonate with you? What if instead of feeling calm and steady in your friendships, you feel more anxious, like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop? Let's talk about anxious or ambivalent attachment style. People with an anxious attachment style crave closeness, but are more likely to constantly worry that their friends don't care as much as they do. They're hyper aware of changes in relationships, changes in communication patterns, and often interpret silence as rejection. So where does this come from, and what did their childhood look like? This usually develops from having caregivers who were inconsistent. Their caregivers are sometimes warm and available, other times emotionally distant or dismissive. Because of this, they learn that love and attention are unpredictable. So now they're always scanning for signs that people are pulling away. One day their parents are fully present, the next day they were checked out, and they never really knew what kind of version of their parents they would get. And that uncertainty becomes their baseline. How does this show up in your friendships now? 1, people with anxious attachment are often the one initiating plans. They might overanalyze texts and tone, like probably when they see their friend use a period or an exclamation point, that might shift something in them. Next is that they might feel more hurt when their friends don't reciprocate their energy. And they might seek reassurance constantly from their friendships. They're also terrified of being too much, but they also can't help but reach out to their friends and check in. Now, before we get into the challenges, let me say that anxious attachment is not at all bad. There are actually some real strengths here. They're incredibly loyal, thoughtful, and emotionally attuned. They notice when their friends are struggling, and they show up really hard for the people they love. They remember birthdays like no other. They're the type of people who send the "how are you doing really" type of texts. And they're also the friend who wants to make their friend group feel seen. However, there are difficulties to having this attachment style too. First is that their need for constant reassurance might push their friends away. They also might misinterpret normal distance or lack of communication as abandonment. For example, their friend doesn't text back for 6 hours. They're the ones most likely to think that, oh, maybe they're mad at me, or maybe they don't want to be my friend anymore, or maybe there's something that I said that they don't like. Now, let me give you concrete examples of what this can look like in real life. For anxiously attached people, They can feel that they care about their friends more than their friends do. They have the tendency to overextend themselves just to keep their friends close, sometimes saying yes even when they want to say no, and they constantly adjust to maintain the connection. They also have the tendency to read into every small shift in someone's behavior, and there's a possibility that they might create narratives that might not be true. So if any of that resonated, here's what you can actually do about it. Because our goal isn't to shame ourselves for having anxious attachment style. The goal is to move toward more secure patterns. First, we have to practice self-soothing. When you feel anxious about a friendship, we have to pause before spiraling. Ask yourself, is there actual evidence my friend doesn't care, or am I just projecting? Most of the time, their silence doesn't have to do anything with you. They might just be in the zone and doing their own thing. When you feel that way, you just have to breathe, you have to ground yourself, and remind yourself of the times that they showed up. Building on that, my second tip is to communicate your needs clearly. Instead of hinting or testing, just say that you're the type of person who needs more reassurance than others. You can also say that it helps to hear that reassurance from them that the friendship is still there or that things are good. Secure friends will most likely appreciate this honesty. You're not being needy, you're just being self-aware and communicating it instead of just keeping it all to yourself and expecting your friend to magically know how you feel. Here's another important piece. We have to diversify our support system. I think it's important to not put all our emotional support eggs in one basket. When we have multiple close friendships, one person's distance feels less catastrophic. If your best friend is busy for the week, you can have other people to lean on. And it takes the pressure off of you and off of everyone. And lastly, you have to work on building that internal validation. Your worth is definitely not measured by how quick or how slow someone responds to your text. Try to engage in wellness activities such as journaling, more movement, and remind yourself that you are still lovable even if people are busy. The more you can validate yourself, the less you'll need external reassurance. I know this is hard work and it takes a lot of journaling and a lot of practice to get to that point, but I think it's so worth it. Anxious attachment / ambivalent attachment, we got that out of the way. And maybe that wasn't you either. Maybe instead of worrying that your friends don't care enough, you're actually the opposite. You value your independence and feel uncomfortable when some people get a little too close. Let's talk about avoidant attachment. People with an avoidant attachment style value independence and often feel very uncomfortable with too much emotional intimacy. They're the type to pull away when things get a little too real or people get a little too close, and they prioritize self-sufficiency over showing vulnerability. So where does this come from? Why do some people shut down instead of reaching out? How do these people develop an avoidant attachment style? This usually develops from having caregivers who are emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or who discourage emotional expression. They're usually the ones who are told, toughen up, stop being so sensitive, why are you crying? Their needs were usually ignored or minimized. They learned that relying on others isn't safe, so they have the tendency to all things alone. They became their own source of comfort because no one else was reliable. Going off that, how does this usually look like in friendships? First is that they're fine with long periods of no contact. They're genuinely fine and they're not pretending. Second is that they're likely to feel suffocated when friends want too much closeness or too much check-ins, or when friends want to hang out every week. They might feel the need to ghost or withdraw when things don't go as planned. Instead of addressing it, they downplay their own needs and they avoid asking for help. Like, that's the last one on their list. On paper, they might seem like the low maintenance friend of everyone's dreams, but that's just natural to them. And it's because sometimes they're completely checked out. Now, before we move on to the challenges of this avoidant attachment style, this attachment style, of course, has its strengths too. They're independent, they don't like the drama, and they're less likely to create unnecessary conflict. They're also great in crisis because they don't panic right away and they just face the challenge and handle it head on. People know that they can count on them to be steady and rational. They don't really need constant validation and they don't feel the need to share every single thing to their friends. However, there are some real downsides to this avoidant attachment too. First is that you can come across cold or indifferent even when you do care. Your friends might feel like they're doing all the work in maintaining your relationships because of how checked out you are. It can look like them reaching out and you giving a few responses or just a simple react emoji. And sometimes when they try to go deeper and they probe, you have a tendency to deflect. And this is a bit dangerous because over time, people might stop trying to get to know you because it feels like you don't want them around or you don't want to explore the depth of the relationship. So this looks like your friend saying, sometimes I feel like I don't really know you, or pulling away when someone gets too close, like things are going great and then suddenly you feel like you need space. This can also look like feeling annoyed by friends who need a lot of emotional support because it feels draining. Like you've done the work all yourself in childhood to handle things on your own, and you get a little frustrated when people need help. And lastly, convincing yourself you don't need anyone, even when in the deepest parts of your soul, you know that you're a bit lonely. So if any of that hit home, here's what you can do to show up better in your friendships and move toward a more secure attachment style. First, practice small acts of vulnerability. You don't have to trauma dump right away, but you can actually try sharing how you feel when your friends ask you, how are you? You can say that you're stressed, you can say that you're nervous about something. It's okay. You will not push them away by telling them how you truly feel. You don't have to go from zero to full emotional transparency overnight, but giving people small glimpses helps them feel closer to you. And building on that, you have to show up even when it's uncomfortable. If a friend asks for support, resist the urge to withdraw. Sit with the discomfort of being needed. You don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes your friend just needs your presence. You can just say that you're here, or you can just spend time with them, even if you don't know what else to say. And here's another crucial piece, which is you have to be the initiator sometimes. I know you're fine with silence, but your friends aren't mind readers. Send a text, show them you care. Start being the one to initiate the plans, even if it feels awkward at first. I think this is just a muscle you build. It might feel awkward at first, but once you develop that skill, it would be very helpful in getting a more secure attachment style. And finally, an important mindset shift, you have to reframe your independence. I know it's scary, but needing people is okay. Letting people in doesn't mean that you'll be less independent, because connection is just a part of being human. You've spent all these years proving that you can do things alone. It's time to be vulnerable and let your friends care about you. And that starts with communicating what you really need or how you really feel. You can be strong. You can let people care about you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. So that is the avoidant attachment. But maybe neither anxious or avoidant attachment fully captures your experience. Maybe you actually swing between both, craving closeness one minute, then pushing away people the next. If that sounds like you, let's talk about the disorganized attachment style. People with disorganized attachment style often have conflicting desires. They want closeness, but also fear it, and they oscillate between clinging and pushing people away, often without understanding why. So where does this come from? What creates this push and pull dynamic? This usually develops from having caregivers who were frightening and traumatic, maybe abusive, neglectful, or deeply inconsistent. The person who was meant to comfort them was also the source of fear, so they never really learned what safe attachment looks like. Their brains got wired with contradictory messages. Come close and stay away at the same time. And there was no consistent pattern to learn from. How can that look like in friendships? First, they want deep connection, but sometimes they have a tendency to sabotage it when they have it. Next is that they might have intense and unstable friendships. Everything feels high stakes. Next is that they struggle to trust people, even when they have proven themselves to be reliable. They're often the ones who wait for the other shoe to drop. Their friendships might feel chaotic, with lots of conflict, intensity, lots of rupture and repair. Now, before we get into the challenges, let me acknowledge the strengths that people with a disorganized attachment have as well. They're deeply empathetic, especially toward other people's pain. They have a deep understanding of struggle in a way that other people might not have. They're also incredibly resilient because these are usually the people who have survived the most unimaginable things. And that strength can show up with how they support their friends through the good and the bad times. There's some real challenges when it comes to this attachment style. Sometimes their unpredictability can confuse and hurt their friends. They might push people away preemptively to avoid getting hurt. Because this behavior doesn't always make sense even to them, it's hard for people to know how to show up for them. Your needs keep changing. They can get confused on how to help you. So if this resonated, if you're recognizing this pattern in yourself, here's what you can do. And I want to say this upfront that this is not easy and it's really hard to navigate this alone. First, I think disorganized attachment often requires professional help to untangle, and there's no shame in that. If you have access to professional help, by all means, seek for professional help. And while you're working on that, be honest and open about your patterns. You can tell your friends that sometimes the reason why you pull away is not a them issue. It's just that you're scared that one day they might abandon you. When your friends understand that your withdrawal isn't rejection, they're more likely to understand you and stay patient with your circumstances. You don't have to explain all your trauma, but giving them context helps them not to take your behavior personally. Here's another practical thing that you can do. Create consistent rituals. Weekly coffee dates, monthly check-ins. Structure might help to keep you safe. When there's predictability, your nervous system can start to relax. You stop waiting for the other shoe to drop because you already know what to expect. Routine might feel boring at first, but for disorganized attachment, routine can probably be your way to healing. And finally, this is the most difficult one. You have to practice staying when things are good. Your instinct is to run when things feel too stable because stability feels unfamiliar and therefore unsafe. You have to practice resisting that thought and let yourself be loved. When you notice the urge to sabotage, pause and ask yourself, am I running because there's a real problem? Or because things are going so well and that scares me? Then regardless of what you feel, choose to stay anyway. So we cover all 4 attachment styles: secure, anxious/ambivalent, avoidant, and disorganized. And here's what I want you to take away from this. Friendships are very nuanced. They require introspection, self-awareness, and the willingness to recognize that the way you experience relationships might not be the way your friends do. And that's exactly why I wanted to talk about maintaining friendships through the lens of attachment styles. Because so many conflicts come down to mismatched needs and unspoken expectations. Maybe you're anxiously attached and your best friend is avoidant. This doesn't mean that this friendship is doomed. It just means you have to communicate differently. You need to understand why they pull away when you get closer, and they need to understand why you need more reassurance than other friends. We all want that ride or die friend group, that chosen family, the community that shows up even when it's hard. And because we want that, we also have to confront the truth that being a part of a village means becoming a villager. And that means showing up even when it's inconvenient. It means understanding your own patterns so you're not unconsciously hurting people, especially the ones you truly love. It means doing the unglamorous work of maintenance, the regular check-ins, the uncomfortable conversations, and the consistent presence. I think now's the time that we need community more than ever. And the beautiful thing is that there is hope and that you can develop a more secure attachment style intentionally. It takes work, but it's definitely possible. Seeking professional help helps, self-awareness helps, practice helps. You're not stuck with the same patterns you learned as a kid. So you have to also ask yourself, are you the friend you wish you had? Are you showing up? Are you communicating? Are you doing the work? Because the village you're craving starts with you showing up as a villager. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what your attachment style is, how your friendships look like, and how you're working on improving them. See you in the next video till we all bloom together. Bye!